There comes a time when every storyteller has to make an important choice. What kind of ending are we gonna go with here? Should it be happy or sad, open or closed, or something else entirely? Some enjoy happy endings because they think the world is pretty awful as it is, so why not just use the escapism that stories provide to pick us up a bit? Or maybe they got so much other stuff going on in their lives to think about the nihilistic implications of technolize. On the other hand, others enjoy being pushed out of their comfort zone or experience the emotions a sad or vague ending would deliver. Personally, I'm of the belief that anything should exist in stories. If there is an idea or a feeling out there, then I would like to know that there is a movie about it somewhere. I like to be able to break the everyday monotone routine by experiencing and exposing myself to all kinds of feelings and sensations, which can be achieved by watching a lot of different movies and anime. If I watch a movie and it ends happy, I will be affected for as long as that feeling sticks without thinking too much about it. But if I get a sad or an ambiguous ending, then I will continuously think about it for much longer. Don't get me wrong, some happy endings can provoke a lot of thought, but I'm speaking in general terms here. I think it is very human to be more affected by the sad stuff. Humankind is a fragile species, and it's showcased in how easily affected we are by sadness. But sometimes even a sad ending can leave a positive experience. It can be as if the movie is comforting us by revealing that we're not alone and the hardship that we have been experiencing has been experienced by others. Upon reaching us on an emotional and vulnerable level, stories are capable of teaching us some great life values, ones that we wouldn't otherwise have been open to accept. One man who seems to have devoted his life as an anime director to create stories like this is Makoto Shinkai. By creating hyper-realistic movies with a lot of humane sincerity in them, they can catalyze both malice and joy within you. Overlaying themes in most, if not all of his films, are ones of human intimacy, impractical love, and relationships. His stories feature couples that cannot be together because of complications, social conventions, and sometimes even time and space. Two such movies I think portrays this better than any are 5 centimeters per second and The Garden of Words. 5 centimeters per second is a 1-hour film consisting of 3 different stories following 2 characters as they fade away from each other as time passes. The first episode is a cutesy yet sincere love story that hits all the beats. It's about a boy, Takaki, who on a winter's evening takes the train to see a girl, Akari. At this point you should already have noticed one of Shinkai's biggest strengths, which is how he animates light. There is no way around it when it comes to determining and drawing the refraction and reflection of light. He is a goddamn genius. This is something you will be noticing in all of his movies, also the next one. As Takaki switches between trains, we get little glimpses of the past where we get to understand the connection between the two of them. They were both ostracized in elementary school but found solace in each other's company. Later they were forced apart when Akari's family had to move, and thus they tried staying in contact through mail. What is not explicitly said is instead shown to us by the way that the characters are animated. In the flashbacks where they talk to each other on the phone about how they cannot meet up with one another, you can clearly see how sad and frustrated they are. Even more subtle is Takaki's growing anxiety throughout the train ride. The train ride is constantly delayed because of snow, and you can sense how it affects him in the way that he hurries down the stairs or how he's sitting in his seat. You wouldn't expect a cutesy love story delivering such tension, but that is most certainly the case here. Every time the train is delayed, the pressure gets a bit more palpable, and it functions greatly as a crescendo, which amounts to an overwhelming release of joy and cathartic satisfaction once he finally arrives and sees that she is still there. The episode is fittingly entitled Cherry Blossoms, which fits perfectly with a cutesy little love story such as this one. It's also apt to note that cherry blossoms usually symbolize the beginning of something. The second story, Cosmonaut, takes place around the time that Takaki is in his 3rd year in senior high. This location, alongside the teacher mentioning the student's future, symbolizes a pathway, a rite of passage, which also indicates that we are now in the middle of the story. This one is all about regrets and looking ahead into the future. Takaki is not living in the moment, and he is constantly looking far away, longing for something or someone. It is clear that he hasn't let go nor lost hope in the feelings he shared with Akari in the first place. This episode introduces Kanae, a lively girl whose romantic feelings for Takaki is keeping her from focusing on anything else. This is probably the least acclaimed out of the 3, mainly because it is all about drifting through uncertainty, whereas the first and third are so innately impactful in their decisive emotional impression. However, this is the story where the themes are most prevalent. You got the constant reminders of space travel representing the theme of distance and journeys. This is also where it gets revealed that the visions we are seeing in between the stories are fantasies dreamt by Takaki. In his mind, he has invented this place far distanced from Earth where he is together with Akari, only reinforcing his burning desire to be with her. There is no real development for our protagonist, as the point is to show how he is stuck. This one ends with Kanae learning a bit more about how to live in the moment, but that doesn't stop her from going to bed crying, as she's now realized that she is not gonna be the girl for Takaki. The sound of keys on a keyboard rapidly being tapped introduces us to the final story, which shares the title with the film. One tiny cherry petal finds its way through the window and onto the desk where an adult Takaki sees it as he sighs. We all know what that means. We see him at an airport reaching his destination, so to speak, as a hint to this being the final story. Every frame of Takaki's apartment is showing us that he has been living a whole life separate from the person we've come to know. There is no joy in his posture anymore. He's been spending too much time longing for something in the past, and he is at his wit's end. I don't think it is too far-fetched to say that he is depressed. A montage of all of the events of the film passes by. They culminate in a final fated meeting between Akari and Takaki, but as we all know, once the train has passed, she is gone. She moved on a long time ago and is now getting married. We will talk about this ending soon enough, but first, the first thing we see are raindrops playfully bumping with the reflective surface of the lake. It's quickly juxtaposed with the sound of a train forcing its way through the shower on steel plates. Amidst the hundreds of working bodies squished together, we are introduced to our first protagonist, Takao, as he almost profoundly monologues to himself about his repetitive status quo before he gets out of the train to enjoy a rainy day in the park. That's where he meets our second protagonist, a mysterious woman named Yukino. In between drawing what appears to be a sketch of women's shoes, Takao briefly looks up to notice the woman is enjoying herself a beer and some chocolate. She gets up, cryptically voices a few poetic lines before leaving. We'll later come to understand that these lines were from a tanka, a form of Japanese poetry, and was meant as a hint from her to him about her being a teacher from his school. And that is how our second film, The Garden of Words, begins. Through a perfect combination of hand-drawn animation, rotoscoping and CGI, Makoto Shinkai and his team has created the most stunning visual film I have ever laid eyes upon, at least in terms of this kind of hyper-realistic style. Every inch of the frame is vibrant, every drop of rain, every ray of light, they all have their own little gesture because that's the way they were drawn. It's all in the animators and director's control, and it is utilized incredibly. The Japanese word for love is koi. However, in native Japanese letters, the word koi is read as lonely sadness, which appears to be the central theme of this film. The movie is about feeling lonely and ostracized, as well as finding comfort in unlikely companionships. Takao is a 15-year-old high school student who feels stuck in a place far from the world of adults, a world he thinks Yukino represents. sense. Yukino, on the other hand, has an identity that is kept secret from both him and us for the first half of the film. She is introduced as a 27-year-old enigmatic woman. Throughout the film, it is revealed that she's been bullied by her students, causing her to resign. It is also hinted at that she has some kind of illness. However, it is not clear whether it is an actual illness of the body or of the mind. We get little hints here and there. She mentions how she couldn't feel her legs at one point. She talks about being fragile, and she also remarks how she's been having problems tasting anything, which is why she enjoys beer and chocolate, because that she can actually taste. However, again, it's not entirely certain whether it is subtext for an illness of the mind, like depression, or if there's actually something physically wrong with her. After repeatedly watching the movie in the search of this answer, I've come to interpret it as her having some kind of sickness striking her body, but also the mind, and she kind of keeps it herself to not invite pity from others. Takao and Yukino develops a platonic relationship with one another. They begin looking forward to the rainy days where they can head towards the park. The heavy rain becomes walls around the pavilion and separates the two of them from the world around them and its social conventions. They tell each other things that they haven't told any other, like Takao wanting to be a shoemaker, or Yukino admitting that she is not capable of walking properly anymore. The film's got a nice flow to it. Many plot points are subtly foreshadowed. In their first scene, Yukino notices the emblem on Takao's school uniform, hinting at the fact that she's a teacher at his school. Later, he tries eating some of her food, which is really spicy. It's played off as comedy, but is later brought into context once we realize that she is struggling with even tasting food. It's not my intention to downplay the final third of the film, but it is a fairly straightforward resolution to what was laid out in the first two. Takao realizes who Yukino is. They meet up again in spite of the rainy season being over. After a bit of tasty home cooking, we get our declaration of love, but the movie ultimately ends with Yukino moving back to her hometown, with Takao pursuing his ambitions with an added dream of seeing her again. As different as they are, both 5 cm per second and The Garden of Words explores the connectivity between human beings, the distance between them, and how the conventions of society sometimes hinder them. It's apparent that Makoto Shinkai idealizes the idea of human connection and intimacy. In Centimeters, he exposes us to a harsh reality that sometimes we have magical, almost perfect moments with another person, but even those moments may not last. In fact, holding on to these moments for far too long can ruin you. In Garden of Words, we're presented to the reality that sometimes love is just not enough, which is sad. But the movie is also incredibly enlightening because it's a thoughtful message about how the human connection can help us heal. Because while we didn't get the sappy lovey-dovey ending that some may have wanted, then the two characters did end up healing each other and help each other to literally and figuratively continue walking in life. I feel like that's the biggest theme in all of these movies, the idea that connecting to another human being can be the greatest and most life-changing of experiences. A kiss in the snow, a walk home from school, or a shared conversation on a rainy day. Reality can be a bitch. It can leave you depressed and feeling helpless, but even that can be cured by sharing it with another.